everybody, welcome to the Brazilian BA guest. And today I'm going to receive a very well-known person in this business analysis community. He is doing a lot of stuff. He has his own channel on YouTube. You must see it because it's really nice. And this guy is Adrian Reed. Hello, Adrian. How are you?
I'm good, Fabricio. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm very honored to have you here. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
The question for you today, Adrian, is why is business analysis essential pre-project, before projects? Because everybody knows that business analysis is essential on projects. Even PMI understand that. But why is it essential before the projects to start?
Yeah, that's a great question, Fabricio. And I think this comes down to the dilemma that many BAs have faced, myself included for sure. When you work on a project and you start to prioritize requirements, user stories, use cases, whatever, and it's impossible. And it's impossible because there's no real clear stated set of objectives. Or you experience that situation where all of a sudden, halfway through the project, you realize, oh, that stakeholder group is trying to achieve something different from that stakeholder group. And, and then the scope starts to creep, the project starts to pull itself apart, or the product starts to pull itself apart because there's no coherence in the actual outcomes that the organization and its stakeholders are trying to achieve. So for me, that pre-project, that strategic business analysis that starts pre-project but continues throughout, is about taking a thin slice through three really important questions. And they're not the only questions we ask, but they are three of the most important questions. And it'll be no surprise that they are why, what, and how. Now, of course, there'll be other questions we'll ask as well, like how long and how much. But actually, before we start doing too much on a project, we ought to have an idea of why change is necessary. The outcomes. What is it that's desirable about doing this thing? Once we are, and if you think about just techniques like problem statements or root cause analysis or multiple cause diagrams, or, if that kind of problem analysis or opportunity analysis, that can help us understand why this is a desirable thing to do in the first place. Then there's the what, because it's like, if there is a why, which is we need to increase revenue by, and I'm being very high level here, but increase revenue by launching some new product or service or whatever. Well, then there's the what, right? What's the broad scope? And that's often the domain of the broad requirement scope. What's going to change? Like for us to meet that why, what's the, and if you think about things like, context diagrams or business use case diagrams and business use case diagrams, not system use case at this point. But then, of course, there's the how. And the how is, okay, what are the possible options? What are the possible options that we could do in order to achieve that what, so that we achieve that why? And I think for me, pre-project is taking a thin slice, just enough, just in time, of those three questions to get everyone on the same page to say, this is what we are trying to achieve. This is the thing that we are trying to do. And here is the broad scope that we're really aiming for, to avoid those situations where the project pulls itself apart, further downstream. And I think in the past, going back in history, there's been an assumption that almost we could ask all those questions separately. Like we ask all the why questions and then all the what questions, and then we get to the how. But like in reality, people's minds, you and I, we're humans. It's natural. We conflate all of these things. So we might go and ask why, but somebody gives us a solution, right? They give us a how, right? It happens all the time. But the why, what, how, you use it, or I use it like a ladder. So if someone gives you a how, you say, well, okay, but what, you've given me a solution. You're talking about perhaps a package or a process change. What is it you're trying to achieve?
Even if those answers are not coming in a in a regular, like in a sequence, they are in some way hierarchical. So you can have the how at first, but you should ask, but what do you need for that, and why you need, or
Exactly.
you build that in different orders, right?
And ladder back up. And when you ladder up to the why, then you can start to say, well, what else? What else would need to change?
Oh,
And
that's great.
how else might we be able to achieve that? And then rather than being stuck with the first solution that somebody's seen, which is very natural, right? We all do that. We have a problem, we want a solution. But rather than being stuck with that, we generate other solutions, which might be better, quicker, slicker. So it's that short investment in time, just enough, just in time, that can really assure the quality and avoid that situation where we metaphorically paint ourselves into a corner, where we jump for the first thing that we see.
That's great. And one thing else I would like to ask you. When you say that this kind of work is happening pre-project, in a lot of companies, there is nobody assigned to an initiative before the project starts. So there's no business analysts allocated to an initiative before a project. How should they deal with that? Because people want to build something very fast, and especially today when we are always talking about agile. Should I have business analysts working outside of projects between business to generate projects? Or should I treat that as like before taking a huge project, take a small project, let's call this pre-project as a small conceptual project? How do you think that should be done?
So absolutely, it's my very strongly held view that and I don't personally, I don't care whether the person has the title business analyst, but somebody needs to be doing the business analysis on that concept. And you're quite right, it is a concept, it's not even a project at that point. And it might be, of course, that it doesn't go through a project life cycle, it might go through a product development life cycle. And that's okay. But like, and it fit, this idea that we're talking about fits really well with a lot of the agile methodologies, because if we take Scrum, for example, well, there's always the question on Scrum, how do you populate your backlog? Do you just go and ask everyone, what do you want? Well, if you ask everyone, what do you want, you're probably going to get lots of stuff which doesn't really fit together. You need to have some framing around that. And
you're just taking orders, you're not analyzing anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that conceptual shaping, which would happen in a project environment pre-project, in a product environment early on too, but it's something that's revisited throughout. So it starts early. But what I would add just very, very briefly is, we've probably all been in places where the work hasn't been done and we haven't been involved early enough. But that doesn't mean we can't still shape it. Like if we're given something, we can do the work in parallel and start to, you start to highlight the cracks. You start to say, oh, this is interesting. I've done a problem statement, and stakeholder A has a very different view on what we're trying to solve here than the stakeholder B. So what do we, take, let's take it to the sponsor and or let's, escalate it or have a conversation, because we've got different perspectives on what we're trying to achieve. And what I've tended to find then is people will say, oh, wow, yeah, there's a disagreement over scope. Gosh, can you help us to get it back on track? Can you help create consensus, or at least an accommodation that people agree with? And then, of course, because you're the BA that's raised it, you're in a really great position to help those people get back in alignment. And then next time they will almost certainly ask for you earlier, because you're the one that helped them out of the tricky situation. And of course, let them take the credit, because none of us really as BAs want the credit. We just want the thing done, right? We want the right thing done for the right reasons.
The importance to have the value generated, right?
Exactly.
Adrian, I love it. Thank you very much for helping us to understand and to think about it a little better. And I believe someone that's watching you today maybe don't know you yet, and you have been doing some great stuff for the BA community. How can people find you? How can people find informations about you or participate in something you are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Fabrizio. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to stay in touch on LinkedIn. There is a free, completely free half-day online business analysis and related topics festival happening in July. If you go to serendipityfest.com, you can sign up for that. It's completely free, so do take a look at that. Also, I run regular webinars and live streamed events. If you go to blackmetric.com/events, you'll see everything that's coming up. But mainly, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see all of those things as and when they come up as well.
Great. And I will put some addresses here down below this video with Black Metrics and your LinkedIn account and everything.
Perfect.
Adrian, thank you very much for being here. It's a very great honor for the Brazilian BA guest show to have you. And congratulations on everything you do for this great community.
Thank you, Fabrizio. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.